Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to our first episode to launch our Fostering and Social Impact through Mentorships series. And the series is a dynamic initiative designed to cultivate leadership, strengthen professional network, and drive equity across the nonprofit sector. With that being said, I want to welcome our first speakers, and I invited Pilar Bonilla, who is a social justice warrior. Thank you, Pilar, for joining us. Can you speak a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Pilar Bonilla, pronouns she, her, ella. And like Rosita said, I am a social justice warrior or social justice worker, like I like to call myself. And I have a lot of hats. I am the co founder of P4P, Payment for Placements National Advocacy Alliance, as well as I do some policy and research. And yeah, I'm happy to be here. I will pass it back to Rosita.
Thank you, Pilar. With that being said, I do want to have a welcoming for Dr. Excel Rivera. Dr. Rivera, please introduce yourself to the audience, who you are, what you do.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Dr. Alex Rivera. I also go by Dr. X, Chief Program Officer at Housing Solutions of New York. I'm also the founder of the I Am She Women's Empowerment Organization. I find myself lately to be the voice for the people. I keep speaking up for people. I enjoy advocating and speaking up for both Black and Brown women in their career spaces, but also for the populations that we serve that we find to be the most vulnerable. And so I do that basically in all walks of life when I think about it. All right. I don't really have to do the introduction of Catherine. However, she makes me the most proud. So I think she should introduce herself and then
Well,
we'll go
thank
into our
you.
conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Vera. So my name is Catherine Galarza. I'm the Senior Director of the Emergency Housing Program with HSNY. I run pretty much the entire portfolio. I'm also a social worker and do therapy as well on the side, although I'm trying to stop that. A lot of hats, yeah, a lot of hats. Definitely worked in the homeless sector for quite some time, worked with youth, worked in a variety of settings, trying to find my footing in social work and trying to find the population that works best for me. And I always end up back with Dr. Rivera. So here we are, thriving and surviving, y'all. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Pilar. Thank you, Dr. Rivera. And thank you, Catherine. And I intentionally didn't introduce myself because I always say guests always come first. But with that being said, my name is Rosita Marinez. Everybody knows me by Rosie. I'm a social worker by trade, but I wear many hats like many of you ladies here and our audience. Currently the Senior Vice President of Supportive Housing for the Institute of Community Living, better known as ICL. I've been in the housing sector now for, 16 years, worked at different organizations. I enjoy the housing world. I enjoy providing a home for people who are unstably housed, chronically homeless, and also advocating for social justice issues, including equitable aspects in housing, mental health, and substance use. With that being said, I want to really talk a little bit about how Pilar and I met, and then Dr. Rivera and Catherine, you could speak a little bit about that before we go into our deep dive of conversation. With that being said, I met Pilar back in 2023, Pilar, or
Um,
2022. I'm trying to keep track of time. I'm not the best
I think it's
timekeeper.
2022. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm still
okay.
a student.
You were, oh yes, you were still a student at Hunter, and I met you through the Latinx social work collaborative that I'm part of and you're part of as well, actually in a Zoom. It's interesting, we're back in a Zoom. And you had mentioned some concerns while you were a student, and I really identified in terms of key factors as we navigate the graduate world, and especially being a social worker or any type of career where you're trying to figure out your field placement, trying to figure out what you want to do next, and things like that, which we all go through. And we had some key factors that share commonalities. And from there on, I was like, hey, if you need any support, you could email me and text me. And then from there, one conversation that lasted, which was supposed to last 15 minutes, lasted 2 hours and a half on a Sunday. And really from there evolved into a mentor-mentee relationship to also a friendship. And so from there on, always been together in terms of areas that we share, like social justice issues. We also share cultural backgrounds that are similar, which is interesting enough, and also family dynamics. And with that being said, we've ventured out not only in a mentorship and sponsorship book edition, but also in different areas of the social work profession, including equity issues with social work today and so forth. So the story really evolved of like, hey, I'm here to support you because I know how difficult it is being in graduate school in general, but especially in social work. And now here we're 3 years down the pipeline, establish a friendship and working on different things. So wanted to know Dr. Rivera and Catherine, how you guys connected. And I hear that Catherine said, I always end up working with Dr. Rivera.
That's how it's been. So Catherine and I met in 2019. I was a shelter director at a Brooklyn location, and she was this young, I say she old, but she was this young, excited. She was very early in her career. She was coming from, I feel like Path or it's Buzzman. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. I just like the fact that she was very passionate. She was very dedicated. The other thing was she was applying to be the DSS, the Director of Social Services. And so you have to have a really strong social service and QA background, quality assurance. And she was like, oh, I can audit charts in my sleep. So then I ended up hiring her. And the beauty of the relationship was I was able to give her autonomy to grow in her role and to figure herself out. Now, the agency we was working for was not 100% in lieu of that. They didn't like that part, right? You needed to be more structured. So then Catherine then branched out. This was in 2019 when we met. And the funny part about our story was I think our connection happened when I first hired her. We ended up at some staff function. It might have been like Christmas-ish or something. And I was like, come on, girl, let's go. I don't drink. And I'm like, I don't know if she did, but I'm like, hey, there's an open bar. And then we go to the bar and she was like, I can't drink, I'm pregnant. And then I'm like, I heard you. And then like I just started thinking like that. I'm like, so now she's about to be gone. And so I did that whole administrative thing in my head. But it worked out because then she had the baby, brought the baby to my office and went back to work. So yeah, we've been there. Then she branched out. She went to another organization. I too went to another organization. And then as my career advanced and her career advanced, I had an opportunity for her. And she literally was the only person that I would have considered for the role. And here she is. So now she's kind of stuck with me.
Stuck is a great word. It's a great word.
And I'm glad to hear this. There's always a connection when two people encounter each other. I always say that you meet people for a reason. We have 4 women of color and 2 who are in executive positions and up and coming leaders like Bilal and like Catherine and in their own niche. And so mentorship is very important in terms of guidance, in terms of support, in terms of sponsorship. And so when I brought this idea to Pilar, I said, look, we don't have this in our communities where it's easy to find a mentor. It's easy to find a coach, right? Because one, it comes with money and that costs a pretty penny. It is expensive to have a mentor, but also a coach. And so having individuals like us to be able to support and guide the future leaders of the nonprofit sector and social workers and housing and social equity issues, I highly consider it's important. And in addition to that, also to be able to have someone there as not only a colleague, but also you establish a friendship, right? You said about Catherine having a daughter, bring her to work. So you get to know people also on a personal level, not only at a superficial or professional level. You get to know them as a person too. And that's the beauty of it. It's a well-rounded aspect of not only the mentorship, the sponsorship, the coaching. You also develop relationships that are long-lasting and hopefully long-lasting and in terms of everything that we do. With that being said, I want to go into key areas in terms of breaking barriers in the nonprofit world. And so wanted to really focus in terms of us women. Number one, it's really difficult for us or challenging, I would say, to break those barriers of the glass ceiling, not only in terms of race, gender, and everything that comes with it, especially in the nonprofit sector. And I would say the housing world, which is a male dominant world, whether you want to see it from a real estate development aspect, from a shelter component, and things like that at an executive level, those barriers are hard to break. And whether you're in housing or not, or in other areas of social justice, Pilar, in terms of equity, payment for placements, and things like that, I want to start off with what you guys feel have been the challenges that women face in leadership roles and how mentorship can help guide women like our future generation of leaders like Catherine and Pilar in terms of navigating those spaces. So I'm opening up to either Catherine or Pilar in terms of one, being a future leader, and where you're headed for. And then two, really, Dr. Rivera, in terms of your experience of what you face navigating going into the C-suite.
I can jump in. Navigating the system in general, where women are usually oppressed, is rough. It's challenging. You want to be dominant, but you also don't want to be the aggressive woman, especially as a Black and brown woman, right?
Mhm.
So it's hard because sometimes your passion comes off as aggressiveness, and it's a very thin line. And then you have to always think about, what am I doing or what have I done that's going to put my career in jeopardy? And I often feel like men usually don't have to think about that. It's just, I
Yeah.
said what I said, and I can be very dominant, aggressive or not, right? Because that's expected of a man. But when a woman does the same thing, it's like, oh, look at her. She's emotional. She's attitudey, whatever it may be. And then God forbid she's Black or brown, then that attachment comes with us. One of the things that I appreciate being at HSNY is that Dr. Ver sets the tone for us. Sets the tone for us not as leaders, but also as Black and brown women, and helping us understand. She always says it's okay to use your voice. You just have to know how to use it. And as my mentor, we have a lot of conversations about communication, right? And understanding, she's like, remember, everything is only temporary. You have to think of your next step, operate in your next step. And I feel like men usually are just like, hey, it is what it is. I'm grateful for being here. I know I'm going to move up. And women always have to put a little bit more effort into it. And we have to be very mindful where men usually don't. Nonprofit is usually women dominated, especially as social workers. But still, our leaders, our CEOs are often men, right? And we have to play the game. You don't want to come off as aggressive. You don't want to come off as rude or incompetent. When in reality, I'm just passionate. And sometimes I have to be very mindful of my tone and delivery, whereas men don't have to be. So as a leader and moving up, there's a lot of things we must pay attention to that I feel like men don't. Just like it is what it is. They don't, it's not a second thought. They use whatever tone they want, and it's assertive. But when a woman uses it, especially a Black or brown woman, then it's aggressive. It's labeled differently. So to move up, I really take the lead of Dr. Vera and just being mindful and watching her lead by example. That's one thing I really appreciate about her, is that she leads by example. Rather than just telling me to do something, she shows me how to do it. Now, whether I catch on right away or not is something else. She will show me, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so that's how you do it. So it's not only telling me, but then now watch how it's done. So I'm very grateful and appreciative of that part.
Catherine, I can totally relate.
Yeah.
It's something that I always say to Rosita. I love the fact that you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. You don't just go and post something about leadership, you're doing the work. And that is so different, right? Having a mentor has been life changing. There are things that I think people take for granted. I'm first generation. So there are things that I haven't been able to ask my parents, but I've asked Rosita, like healthcare benefits, right? How do I know? When do I ask for that at a job interview? How much should I expect? Questions that other people might have their parents answer because of whatever reason. That isn't always, there's no book about this. We're trying, we're doing, I think, 3 times as much as another woman would in this industry to get by. So I feel like mentorship has just been life changing, and that it just gives so much. And then if done correctly, it becomes this symbiotic relationship. Rosita knows this. I really admire and look up to her. And it's just, she's doing what I want to do. And sometimes when she might be busy or whatever, I ask myself, okay, what would Rosita do? Like, how would, if somebody, for example, I've been told a lot, have an attitude, Kat, like you said, those little stereotypes. And I'm like, oh, breathe, breathe, breathe. Okay. Rosita would tell me to stay calm. So I'm going to stay calm. But, oh, this is really hard. And so there are so many facets to having a mentor. And I think it's a privilege. And I wish everybody had that relationship and that opportunity because it's been amazing.
Well, thank you, Pilar, and thank you,
Right.
Catherine. And so, Dr. Rara, I would like to get your input in terms of your leadership journey in the C-suite, and then what levels of support did you have or maybe didn't have, and how that translate into what Catherine was saying.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, to speak prior to being in the C-suite, so initially, beginning in my career, I felt that Black and brown women in particular were against me in some regards. And it's actually how I Am She was created, right? And so when I started my journey, it wasn't other persons that were like, oh, the Lex doesn't know something. It was always one of us. And then it would be like, oh, she's doing too little. Let's get rid of her or let's do something. And when I realized that early on in my career, first, it helped mold me to understand that I didn't want to be her. right? So when I started to matriculate in my own career, I never wanted to be the one that was holding down one, other women, but two, particularly not Black and brown women, because we already have to come to the table 5 times more better dressed, let alone the degrees we possess, the licenses that we go after, the continuous education that we can. So besides that, it's just like, hey, your suit looks just as good as his suit, but yet people look at him differently. The second part that I looked at early on was that I was going to pour into other girls. So one of the themes or one of the quotes, I have a lot of quotes. I'm quoted out. They'll tell you, anybody who follows me, I be quoting all kinds of stuff. But one of the quotes I always say is that as long as I'm good, so are you. And that's what I tell them. So if I ever have a space in which I either can create or be in, then I bring other people with me, right? So when I have speaking conferences, I'm telling Catherine, register for this. Catherine probably don't even know half of the things that she's registering for when I send it to her phone. But I'm like, register for this, register for that, pay for this. We'll get you reimbursed, right? Because I need to put you in the room. And when I put you in the room, then I'll connect you to people. Now, as it relates to my own mentorship journey, I didn't have any necessary. I had one woman in the nonprofit space. Her name is Tia, and she is still in the nonprofit space. She was my site director when I entered into shelter, and she is the one who literally taught me everything. Like, I mean, I sat with her every day for lunch, every single day for 4 years, and I asked every question about everything of how a shelter was run. And she literally poured into me up until even last week when I saw her at this conference. I said, hey, we got to have more conversations because I want to fine tune budgets and finance. And she was like, oh, yeah, girl, call my phone. So she was the one major influential person as it relates to direct contact and mentorship. Then I had role models, I guess I can say, in the field, right? People like Karen Ford and Jocelyn Carter, who I would see from afar, right? They was always up there. I would see from afar, but now I'm entering into spaces with them. And the beauty of now entering into spaces with them is they embrace me, which is not what was happening when I first entered into nonprofit. I did not feel embraced. So they embrace me to the level where I'm like, okay, so let me continue to figure out and let me continue to do. Now, I didn't apply to be in the C-suite. I tell Catherine this story all the time too. I didn't apply. And I'm a preacher's kid. So every now and again, I revert back to the Bible. And in the Bible, it talks about how the people had a mind to work. All I knew to do was work. I have West Indian background, half Puerto Rican. I just knew that you go to work, right? That's it. So I just worked. And then what happened was the door opened. And as you know, my current boss, he saw me and then he said, I want to make this offer to you and I can see where you're going. And that's how I ended up there. Now, since I've been in the role, again, I've maintained my own authenticity and I've also ensured every day to be intentional about how I'm showing up in these spaces because I don't feel anymore like I'm doing it for Zalex. I feel like God has put me in a position to do it for people like Catherine and to do it for whoever Catherine is then pouring into. And so I'm trying to make sure that if I'm telling Catherine to watch her mouth and her tone every single day, y'all heard that every single day part, every single day, right? That I too have to, when I write the email that she CC'd on, I have to show her this is how you address somebody when you don't like what they said in the email before. And it's funny because sometimes she'll text me and say, that's how you're supposed to say, mind your business, right? Because now I have shown her the model of it. But I also think the other caveat, and Pilar talked to it a lot, that the caveat about a mentor-mentee relationship is that it's not a one-way street, it is a two-way street.
Mhm.
So I firmly believe that Catherine understands if I enter into a space that I'm going to protect her in that space as long as she's doing what she's supposed to do and vice versa. So she knows that, you know what I'm saying? And it helps build and nurture the relationship because she's like, I'm gonna just keep working because I know that you kept working and it got you to a certain place. So that's one of the major things about mentor-mentee relationships for me. And the other part is I always try to find new ones. That's me, right? Now that I can't go to school anymore, I'm probably gonna find a bunch more of them. But the reason for that is because there is so much growth and empowerment when you are surrounded with like-minded women. When you can have lunches, like you said, that go hours and you didn't even know you were sitting there for hours, or you can have full-blown text conversations for days and it doesn't feel exhausting and it feels empowering and it feels encouraging, that now I'm in a space where I want to be more in those spaces than brunch. Unless it's a woman's brunch, and then maybe we all could just be at brunch having a good time. So that's where I'm at with it too.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with all of you. And Dr. Yara, you mentioned something about not having a specific mentor, and that I also share that journey. And also, I had mentioned this to Pilar and others that I didn't have that support of a mentor saying, "Hey, Rosita, I want to mentor you," and things like that. I actually had to find like minded individuals, especially in the housing sector, where we support each other, we bounced off ideas, spoke about different things in order to get more guidance. One to mention Mark Jennings, who created Relish. We go way back of where we started together, like community access, same level of program director, and we grew together in a community in the housing sector that's very challenging and difficult. And being a female, breaking those barriers to go into an executive level, it also helped me moving on in my career in terms of the different spaces that I was working and also managing. And when I was going back to pursue another master's at Fordham, I actually found someone who was really invested in me. And up until this day, I'm really appreciative of him. And his name is Joe Benacosta. He's the CEO of a well-known organization. And he doesn't look like me, completely different background and things like that. But he actually saw something in me of saying, "Hey, Rosita, I could really think that with the right support system and guidance, you could go into a C-suite and move into that space." And he really was able to provide me that support while I was at Fordham. And even after I left Fordham as well. And it's not an easy journey, right? We're here to really, as women, and like you mentioned, Dr. Rivera, sometimes there's like many times, and I would say that there's like a competition, right? Who's doing what more? Who has more speaking engagement? Everything that comes with it, other than having that level of like, oh, look what I'm doing, or competition, or scared of someone may take something away, is having more of that support that we're all in this together and each other supporting ourselves in terms of these spaces can actually be more powerful than working against it, right? Because it does happen and it's true facts. And with that being said, the power of representation is important, not only of women, especially women of color, especially in the nonprofit sector, also in terms of establishing the culture of mentorship, which is also hard to establish. We talk about it, but what is really the culture of mentorship, and being able to not only support, but get that support from like minded individuals. And in that journey, I also say for myself, this whole of an aspect of imposter syndrome, that we think like, oh, we don't deserve to be an executive. We don't deserve to be in certain spaces or at the table because of what society and workforce and everything that comes with it, which is not true. We shouldn't feel that way. But the mainstream makes you feel like, oh, well, I need to work 10 times harder, which has happened to me, to try to prove myself that I'm worthy to be in a particular space, which does happen. I have to work more than anyone to try to go to a conference and show my boss, hey, I'm worthy of going at a conference at an executive level, and so forth. It's taken me a long time to really explore that area and where that's coming from. And with that being said, I would like to get how you guys have navigated that imposter syndrome, or imposter in terms of different areas in your workspaces, and also as mentors, how can we support you guys in terms of overcoming that area? Because it is true facts, and it does happen at whatever level you are in your career. So I wanted to hear what you guys think about it. How do you manage that? What are ways that you guys have coped with it, not only as a mentee, but also as a mentor?
It's been rough, and in all honesty, for I always refer to Dr. Ver as Big Dog. So when I am going to these events, speaking on panels, I just want y'all to know she doesn't give me an option. She's like, sign up, you're doing this, got it, cool. And I'm like, okay, we're down for it. I often feel like a fraud. And I feel like people are going to think I'm a fake Dr. Rivera. Or I noticed that I've worked with her for quite some time and I take a lot of leadership characteristics from her. And I'm always afraid of what people think of me. Am I doing too much? Am I doing too little? Am I trying to act like Rivera? And I'll feel like oftentimes I'm overworking to prove myself. I'm overworking to prove that I'm worthy of being in this space. I'm overworking to prove that although I love Dr. Rivera as my mentor, I am different than Dr. Rivera. I'm overworking to prove that I am my own person and my own woman and my own leader. And I often wonder, do men do the same thing, right? With or without a mentor, do they do the same thing? And I know that that's something I need to work on internally. I notice it a lot when I'm going into these spaces and I question my ability and I question, do I deserve to be here? And then I quickly remind myself, you do. And then the self doubt always comes up, right? And the praise or the acknowledgement that not only I receive from Dr. Rivera, but from others often reminds me, like, you got this. You're doing the right thing. You're going to make mistakes. It's okay. But we have to learn from it. We can't keep continuing to make the same mistake. And I literally remind myself quite frequently, you deserve to be in this space because Dr. Vera's not putting anybody in these spaces to embarrass her. So I'm like, okay, if she keeps picking me, I'm doing something right. I'm doing something right for not only for myself, but for her and for my organization. The fraud, the feeling of being a fraud or being a fake Dr. Rivera and things like that are always going to resonate with me. But that just comes from insecurities that I think I just need to work on my own. But that's what happens when you have a great mentor and a great leader. You're always going to feel like, am I just as good? Am I great? Or what's happening?
Yeah, I think when you have so many people to look up to, it's like a double-edged sword because you're like, I'm not as good as they are. Or do I belong here? Am I smart enough? Am I just enough? And for the longest time, my saying would be like, well, just fake it till you make it and you'll get there. And recently, though, not too recently, I saw this post by the dope Black social worker who I love. And she was talking about imposter syndrome and the fact that imposter syndrome, it exists, but it doesn't really exist. It isn't us. We are not the issue. This is a systemic problem that has made us feel like we don't belong, but we are perfectly fine where we are. This is on purpose. Society wants us to feel this way. Society wants us to feel like we don't belong in these spaces. And so it's like an internal struggle, an internal battle. Like, no, I belong. I belong so much. I should not be questioning myself. Others should. And so it's one of those kind of pushing that rhetoric in my head, like, no, 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 I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Mhm. I agree. So believe it or not, imposter syndrome hits me a lot. Not as often lately, maybe because all I do is work. But last time I remember it being a big moment was I had finished my PhD. I finished my PhD under 35. And so that was different. The reason why it became so different and imposter syndrome hit so quick is because my name changed, right? And so people literally had to change how they was addressing me. And I thought that was weird. I got people who've known me like my whole life. And now you're like, Dr. X, Dr. X. And I'm like, why can't you just be regular? But the reason why it hit so quickly is because I'm like, no, but seriously, who are you? Like you said, Pilar, it's like you immediately start thinking, well, who are you to have a PhD? Why did you get the PhD? What are you about to do with this PhD? Like all these questions just started hitting. But the main part about that for me was when I got my PhD, I started to analyze my surroundings more. And so I started to realize I don't know, still to this day, it's 5 years later. Well, yeah, 5 years later. I feel like my circle is wrong now. And so it's not so much I have imposter syndrome, or maybe I do. It's sometimes that the people I now hang out with, I don't think they're growing with me. And then my imposter syndrome is now hitting because what are you about? Like, do you think you're better than them now? Because you think your surroundings have changed. And so I think that's hitting me. And then it hits me. And then my career happens. And I'm like super busy. I feel bad. My friends are always like, girl, just say hey when you can. And I'm like, that's how friendships work. But it's a lot. But the key thing that I've learned with imposter syndrome is that the word of mouth is a great thing and affirmations is an amazing thing. And whatever you've learned in your journey, you now need to pour into somebody else and teach it to them. Let me give you two examples. One, I constantly remind Catherine in particular that she's doing a good job and she can go to sleep. Doesn't work. She doesn't really go to sleep. But I say it because I remember 18-hour days that sometimes I still have. And I remember feeling like, oh, I just got to prove myself and I got to do something. But I also knew that I really could have did it in the 10, 12 maybe. I didn't have to do it in 18. And that time period did not guarantee my success. I constantly just did the work, whether it was 8 hours or 18. And so now when I'm talking to Catherine, who's also working on her doctoral degree, I'm saying to her, okay, but you can now go to sleep, right? Because you have support. I didn't have it. If I didn't do a report, the report was not done. And the supervisor I had at the time, when me and Catherine met, she was going to throw me under the bus. It just is what it is. So I didn't have that, but Catherine has it. And so I'm always like, hey, girl, go to sleep or I'm cutting your emails off. That's how bad it has to become. Because I also learned that the more exhausted you are, the more imposter syndrome shows up because you're burnt out. Now your baby is like, oh, mommy, you don't spend time with me. And now you're like, oh my God, I'm a bad mother. It's going to start getting worse if you don't stop and reset. And so I say to Catherine, take a break, take a moment. And then sometimes she says it back to me, but not all the time, but she says it back. Well, in all fairness, I have my executive assistant did. My executive assistant said to me today, I said, hey, I'm supposed to be off. She said, great, turn the phone off. And I turned it off because I was not going to turn it off until she said it. But I'm saying all this to say that all of that plays into our psyche and it plays into then how we show up in these spaces as Black and brown women. And I think that if we poured more into each other, and this is across the board, so everybody watching this, whoever's listening, we need to pour more into each other. Give that girl a compliment at random at the conference because you don't know how that random compliment will now address her body issue that she might have had prior to wearing that outfit. To me, it doesn't always have to be this connectedness that we have here on this call. It literally can be the complete stranger that smiled at a conference because those kind of things I think help you offset like, okay, I'm not doing as bad as I think I'm doing. And it allows you to do better, in my opinion. But that's what I've learned. And I try to be what I didn't have as a mentor and as somebody that looks up to me for people like Catherine and others. That's what I try to do.
Yeah. You all bring valid points in terms of that. One is self-care, what I'm hearing. Dr. Rivera is very important. It has a lot to do with our psyche, how we think about ourselves, also our upbringing plays a part. And if we're feeling burnt out, it's not really gonna help at all. And yeah, I always say compliment someone who just presented because you don't know how that might mean the world to them or to any little thing that they may feel like, oh, am I doing this right or wrong? Compliment that person, say, hi, you did great because it is hard. Number one, public speaking, it is hard. Two is that you have to overcome your own insecurities, meaning in terms of anxiety, in terms of, am I doing this well or not? Am I a good fit? I always say complimenting the person because it is hard to just be able to be in those spaces, but also being able to stand up and be able to have that voice. With that being said, I want to talk about, Dr. Rivera, you touched based on that lightly in sisterhood and support. What does that mean? Us women, yes, you have I want to go back with men, right? So Catherine, you had mentioned about like, men could be boisterous, they could come out however they choose to, and it's okay. But us women, especially women of color, if we're too assertive, we're coming off being angry, which isn't the case. We're just being assertive about it. And then with that being said, it's okay for the men to have the whole brotherhood, right? Because there is a brotherhood. That's the facts. Men go into arguments and whatever, they hash it out and they're good, right? Us women, we try to hash things out and sometimes it doesn't go that way all the time. With that being said, we have to have our sisterhood and be really supportive about our sisterhood because the brotherhood is really tight and it's really ingrained in all the spaces, right? So with that being said, how can we lift each other without replicating any type of hierarchy or gatekeeping? Because that really does exist. And I touch base on this in different forums, as you know, Pilar, in either Social Work Today or in the Latinx Collective and other spaces where the gatekeeping is real in our profession, whether it's social work, nonprofit executive, housing. So I wanted to get your take on this area because I find that it still exists, it's still there, and even how to navigate it could be challenging in itself. And so I want to know, how have you navigated? What has been your experience? And also, what are the solutions in terms of really eliminating that hierarchy that exists in gatekeeping?
So sisterhood and even mentorship, one of the things that's important about that is being very transparent. Understand we're not always going to agree.
Mm-hmm.
Lord knows Dr. Ver and I always don't agree, right? But one thing that I appreciate it is where we always view things from different spaces. I'm viewing things in the here and now. She's viewing things, how will this affect me long term? I never look in the long term. I'm looking at what is it doing to me now? And she's like, which oftentimes then affects my communication, right? Or affects the way in which I lead or affects my boundaries. And he always talks about, okay, yeah, you're doing it now, but how will that hinder your progression later on? And I think in the sisterhood, it really is just that. Siblings don't always agree, right? We're going to fight. We're going to argue. We're going to go toe to toe. I don't agree with you. And I think that that's also part of a mentorship. We're not always going to agree, but someone needs to see the bigger picture. Someone needs to see the end result and the end goal, because sometimes the mentee does not, right? And I can't see past my feelings of where I am now. And Dr. Vera goes, she will validate me and say, I hear you. I hear where you are now. I understand why you're upset, but let's figure out a way to express that, because we don't want this moment to hinder your career progression and your professional progression later on. So sisterhood is huge in terms of understanding that my mentor is not out to get me. She's not out, even when we don't agree, even when I feel like, oh Lord, Dr. Vera telling me some stuff I don't want to hear. Good. That's what a mentorship is supposed to be. That's what a sister is supposed to be. It's supposed to be very honest. And if I liked everything she said, my career wouldn't be where it is. I wouldn't be where I am. And it would just be a yes or no, sir type of relationship. And that's not what mentorship is about. It's about me being challenged, but also questioning things, and her being patient, very patient, sometimes too patient, with understanding. You might have to tell me the same thing 50 times, and at some point it will click, right? And sometimes I say that to her, like, girl, I found a me, and I don't know how you did it, because whoa. And she's like, you will find a you in your career, but pour into them the same way I'm doing. So the sisterhood for me is more so about being honest, being transparent, knowing we're not going to love each other every moment of the day, but understanding that I often text her, like, I can't stand you, but I love you right now. God, I didn't want to hear that, but you're right. As much as I don't want to tell you, you're right. And learning from her, if I don't agree with it, but like, all right, walk me through this, because it's not clicking. And then she will baby step it for me. So again, it's being honest, being transparent, being open, being very open to advice and encouragement and suggestions, and knowing you don't have to agree with it now. Your mentor's looking for you long term, not where you are now in the present.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Absolutely. I want to say the same. Pilar and I may not agree on many things, which we don't many times, and we still do in many areas. However, with that being said, it's great to have both of our own opinions, but I'm always looking out in terms of what you just mentioned, not the here and now, but the future of what may be lying next. And even though Pilar and I don't work together in that context, we share different other things outside of work and projects, or even relationships and networks. And so, Pilar, I want to get your take on it, because it's a little bit different that you and I don't work together, like Dr. Rivera and Catherine, and how you've been able to navigate that area in terms of sisterhood and support and gatekeeping.
I tend to think of sisterhood as another form of community, right? And I'm a big believer that we must lift while we rise, because you look at the word community, without the unity part, there is no community. And it's so important not to hold each other back. Why would we do that to ourselves? I know when I was a student, I saw a scholarship, even though I could have just applied to it and had a higher chance of winning. Why was I going to do that when I could share it with the rest of my cohort who it was applicable to? If I was going to win, I was going to win because I wrote the best essay or whatever requirements was, not because I gatekept anybody. I've never been the type of person to gatekeep. I don't want to gatekeep knowledge. I don't want to gatekeep information or success. It just hasn't been my thing. And I think that's one thing that both you and I agree with, Rosita, is not gatekeeping anybody from being there. And I think a big part of this is also acknowledging the privilege that we have. It's a privilege to have been able to get a master's degree, and it's a privilege to have higher education. We are so privileged that in some ways, yeah, we could be in different places, but at the same time, we are so privileged to be where we are at the moment, and acknowledging that privilege and also giving other people grace. You don't know what somebody's feeling. You don't know what somebody's thinking. You don't know what somebody's going through. So never letting, even somebody might talk to me in a certain way, and I might be like, oh, okay. But then I'm like, okay, stop. I need to get my ego out of the question. I don't know what this person is going through. They might have lost somebody recently. They might be grieving. They might be going through a million things. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and give them grace and still be authentic about what I'm doing. I believe in being very open minded and acknowledging that I have privilege, and I want to share that privilege because I want to see as many of us up here as possible. I want us all to be up here. I don't want us to be the few. I want us to be the many in so many regards.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. With numbers come power, right? You don't want to be the only one or be tokenized and what that looks like and things like that, or the only unicorn. I mean, we're all unicorns and special in our own way, right? But with that being said, being able to support each other, especially us women, and having that sisterhood and how that looks like in every single space that we encounter, it shows how powerful we are as a community. And yes, it is a community in terms of sisterhood. And we may not always agree on everything, right? Because we're people, we all come from different backgrounds and ideologies and things like that. With that being said, I want to hear about women in leadership and being intentional about the pathways that we create, but also leaving a legacy. We want to leave a legacy in terms of the work that we do as a person that we are, and that people can not only connect with us, but future individuals as well. So, Dr. Rivera, I want to hear your input and feedback about creating a legacy in the work that we do, and also in terms of how can we continue creating future generations of leaders, because I know I'm not going to be here forever and things like that, and want to pass the baton to not one, to many, to continue leading in terms of the work that we do, not only in the nonprofit sector, but in other things that we might be doing outside as well.
So the major part for me is always legacy, right? Because I plan to retire and be on a yacht somewhere. I don't know,
There you
doing
go.
something.
Yes.
Yeah, I plan to live a good life. I'm not saying I'm not living a good one now. I'm just saying I plan to live a good life. But I get a lot of strength in seeing Black and brown girls succeed, right? Or women. I get a lot of strength in that. Like, I always laugh and call myself a proud peacock. Like, when one of my mentees are always like, oh, they done did something new. I told Catherine when she graduates, I'm showing up to Tulum and I'm going to have a low horn. They're not even
Oh,
going to
yeah.
know I have a degree. That's how obnoxious I'm going to be in the people stadium. But I say that to all that I'm empowered in that. I'm empowered. And honestly, in my role now in the C suite, it's helpful because I have a different task now in this role, which is more external facing and stakeholder engagement and all the political aspects of it. And so when I come back into work and I'm able to see that work is actually being done and people are like, oh, Catherine's doing a great job and this has happened, then it's rewarding for me as well because there's a level of trust that has taken place. But legacy is big. And I think that a lot of Black and brown women, as I said before, need to spend less time being comparative to each other and more time being collaborative, right? So I've never, since I've had that first experience where the lady, she prematurely fired me at another agency I was at, which is very funny because now we're in the same space again. But now I'm in a different role. And so now when I walk up to her, she's like, oh my God, Dr. X, like, and I'm like, oh, I want, because it takes everything in me not to say,
Yeah.
girl, you remember when you fired me? Like, I just want to, but I haven't to this day. I take pictures with this lady, everything. I do it, but I make sure that moving forward, when a Black or brown girl comes to me and they're like, hey, I just want to be a CPO, I'm like, great, girl, because I didn't want to be this one. So let's work it out together. And I pour into them and I try to make sure that if you want me to mentor you, I tell this to everybody, if you want me to mentor you, you can't be a crab in a barrel because crabs keep other crabs down. And so even now, Catherine has her own mentees. She struggled with them from time to time because she's real passionate, as she said, right? She's real passionate, but she still comes to me and she's like, listen, either you get my mentee or I'm going to have to cut them off. And I'm like, let's process this, right? Let's do this together because you're just as frustrating as they are. So you got to do it together and then work it out. But I think legacy is a big thing, right? I will always honor those who poured into me. Every time I talk about my shelter experience, I call Tia's name, right? Because she poured into me to a level that to this day, she is excited because she said, I have these other women that surpass me and they make me feel good. You know what I'm saying? And so I want that exact same thing, right? I can't wait to the day when Catherine calls me and I'm on my yacht and she is now the CEO of whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, I cannot wait, right? And I'm going to guide her through that process. So I think legacy is a big, big thing, but it also ties into the authenticity of each other and of yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, you want to leave a legacy not only of the work that you have done, right? well, in terms of programs, in terms of operations, in terms of community and improving the lives of our clients and members and things like that, but also in terms of, like you mentioned, in terms of our mentees, right? I want Pilar to go for her PhD in social welfare and do all this research in terms of social equity issues within the workforce development of social workers and so forth. And hopefully she will soon. With that being said, it's the encouragement, right? I'm the biggest cheerleader of my mentees, and it's also men. It's not only stick to women. Also, biggest cheerleader in terms of that, because not only do you leave the legacy of the work that you have done in the nonprofit or in the human service sector, but also in terms of great future leaders in that area. So as we close out the series, or the episode better yet, want to know about the vision and collective power that we have. One, as women, right? And two, in terms of want to know, what would you say to your younger self? And then lastly is, what do you want to let the audience know? So really, in terms of those three areas, what do you see in terms of future by and for women mentorship? And what advice would have you given your younger self? And also any women who are entering in the sector that we are currently in?
I can kick it off. Younger self. I always laugh at that question because of where I am today. I probably would not tell her anything
Mhm,
because sis
mhm,
this did what she did. And I think that every mistake that I made molded me into the woman I am today. So I would tell her to just keep being exactly who she is. There was a second part to that. The thing I want to leave with women entering into this space is find your fit. And I'm saying that because we're not all for everybody. We're not for everybody. We're not for every population. We're not for every career path. Find your fit and actually learn it. Degrees don't guarantee promotion. I
mhm.
know that's an old school thing. It's an old school model. Oh, you get a degree, you just get promoted. It does not. It requires knowledge, it requires passion, it requires character, and it requires figuring out what is your niche and chasing that. And then if I had to leave another quote, because I told you I'm a quoter, I always tell people that the sky is not the limit, it's only the beginning.
Thank you, Dr. Rivero. How about you, Catherine or Pilar?
I can tag in. I would tell my younger self and even my current self, your voice is not too much. The room is just too small and you have to know how to use it. Trust my instincts and trust my gut feeling. But also the main thing is be teachable at all times. Sometimes I feel like I know everything. And Dr. Ver is like, let's humble yourself. So definitely being humble. The future of mentorship is not clogging the pipeline. Dr. Vera
Mhm.
told me years ago, you should always be coming for my job and the next person should be coming for yours. So I train my staff, men or women, to move up when I'm at work and I'm having 1,010 promotions all the time and I'm doing my lovely board reports for Dr. Vera. It is amazing to see so many individuals in my portfolio being promoted, being poured into, making them feel like, oh, there's actually growth potential here. Like I said, Dr. Vera told us not to clog the pipeline. I think I have 17 or 20 case managers and 15 of them are going back to school and understanding that Dr. Vera poured into me into understanding whatever your school schedule is, we will make it work. And the
Mhm.
same thing. So I find a lot of the stuff, like I always tell us, I had a baby Rivera moment and I'm doing things, but I would have never considered myself to be someone who could be a mentor and it just came naturally. And I didn't realize I was pouring into people because the pouring from Dr. Rivera came naturally. So when she did it to me, I noticed I was doing the same thing to others. And it's rewarding to see individuals move up, not only in the company, but in their own growth and
Mhm.
career path, whether it's with us or not. So definitely be patient and be teachable.
Thank you, Catherine. How about you, Pilar?
I think I would tell my younger self that you're going to keep on learning till
Mhm.
the day you die. Be a lifelong learner. You don't have to be perfect. Imperfection, it's part of life. Things are going to happen. It's how you deal with it. Be open to always learning, to becoming a better version of yourself. And that's something I would tell my younger self as well as anybody who's listening to this. Be open to learning because you will never know everything. Never. And that's okay. And also, never forget that there is power in number. There is more of us than there is them. And we can do so much if we just worked together. So much.
Thank you. Before we end, one thing that I would say is about what advice I would give to my younger self. I feel just like Dr. Rivera. Everything that I've gone through professionally and also on a personal level, I wouldn't change anything because everything actually, there was a purpose of me going through things on a personal or on a professional level to get to where I am now and moving on to whatever other ventures come down the pipeline. So I don't regret anything I've done. And that's the facts because you have to go through things to learn to become a better person, a better leader, and just an overall better person. I would say that in terms of what the future looks like for mentorship in women and by women, I really consider that we need to continue having not only these conversations, continue building each other up, coming together in these spaces, being able to acknowledge each other, and also being able to bring others, just like you mentioned, Catherine. I'm a big supporter of mentoring individuals in our own organization and providing them opportunities like the relish and went back to school or whatever we could do. And when there's openings, being able for them to have that opportunity because I know how hard it is to get those opportunities and being able to promote that. With that being said, ladies, I greatly appreciate you all. Thank you for coming to launch these series. I'm super excited. You all bring a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you all and thank you all for being part of this important conversation. Our next episode will be coming out soon with different guest panelists and stay tuned to what's coming up next. Thank you all. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.